Hello and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true and open debate they've been looking for. Native Americans call strong weather systems huracan after a great spirit who commanded the east winds. Spanish explorers adopted that word and gave the weather systems names of patron saints. Hurricanes or huracans, whichever word that you might use, can result in devastation and or a loss of life and should never be taken lightly. The Atlantic hurricane season starts June 1st through November 30th. And we were taught that we should be prepared with our list of necessities from May of each year. Like all Eastern Caribbean islands, the Bahamas are quite vulnerable to hurricanes. Last year's Atlantic hurricane season was significantly more active than usual, and the Bahamas were blasted by two back-to-back Category 5 hurricanes, Irma and Maria, in September 2017. This year, we have 21 named systems that might be in the very same place and put us in the very same position as we were last year. Tonight, we discuss hurricane season. When disaster strikes, the time to prepare has passed. And our guests for the evening are Caroline Turnquest, Director General of the Red Cross, Sterling Moss of BPL, and Greg Thompson, meteorologist. Join us in our discussions on hurricane preparedness. It's all on the record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our discussion begins on the other side of this break.
Is your loved one celebrating a birthday? Or maybe they're commemorating a special occasion and you don't know what to get them? Why not get them something custom made from Executive Printers? At Executive Printers, you can create personalized calendars, greeting cards, and even playing cards just for them. A one-of-a-kind gift. They can even do personalized cups, mugs, keychains, coasters, and notepads. So come in and place an order today. We are located on Jerome Avenue South, or log on to epbahamas.com for more info.
Welcome back to On the Record. 3 out of 4 hurricanes and tropical storms occur between August and October, with storm activity peaking in early to mid-September. And still, despite all of the predictions of rain, the Bahamas sees about 250 days of sunshine every year. Our guests are Red Cross Director General Caroline Turnquest, Sterling Moss, Transmission and Distribution Maintenance with BPL, and Greg Thompson from the Department of Meteorology. Our topic for this evening is the hurricane season. When disaster strikes, the time to prepare has passed. Welcome to On the Record. But before we start our discussions, let's take a look now at the year of predictions. I'm joined by meteorologist Greg Thompson. Greg, let's look at the numbers recently brought out. Tell us a little bit about what's going to happen this year, or what we predict will happen this year in terms of named storms, hurricanes, and I see we even have major hurricanes here.
Yeah, well, Jerome, of course, this is the last couple of years were very busy years. We had 3 years consecutively where we had a hurricane impact the Bahamas. This year, we're employing the public to prepare themselves for another active season. The numbers out so far from the Colorado State University, Dr. Phil Klotzbach, who has taken over from Dr. William Gray, basically has it slightly above average. You notice we have 14 named storms expected during the season, normals around 12. Hurricanes, we expect 7 of those to be hurricanes. 6 is the normal, and of course, major hurricanes, they're basically around the same 3 major hurricanes to impact at least the Atlantic hurricane season.
When you say major hurricanes, what are we talking about? Strength, size, etc. Give us a snapshot into what's considered a major hurricane.
A major hurricane is anything from a category 2 to 3 and above. Of course, the last few hurricanes we had were very strong ones, making it up to category 4. And we expect, like I said, another busy season. So there's a possibility that we could see another system passing through us, or very near us.
Anything in the atmosphere, or how do we know that it's going to be an above average year or above normal year?
Well, they take into account some of the effects of La Nina, El Nino in the Pacific. Of course, if you do have an El Nino, we do have it tends to produce stronger upper level winds in the atmosphere, which tends to shear hurricanes during the season. So when we do see the El Nino effect in the Pacific, that spells good news for us. We just came out of a La Nina, and of course, last season we had a major hurricane come through. That tends to allow the winds to be relaxed. The systems tend to form, and they will continue to strengthen as they move into the Atlantic. The other thing is we also take a look at the water, the sea surface temperature across the Atlantic. This year, it's slightly below normal. We expect cooler water temperatures, but of course we're still early in the season, and it's a possibility that those waters could strengthen or get warmer over the next couple of months.
So warmer water is bad news?
Bad news. That provides the fuel.
Let's talk a little bit about the paths that these storms take. We all look at the storms from the moment they are announced, from the moment they form, and then we sort of watch them move. And there are some paths that they take that give us some indications very early on whether we are at high risk. I just want to talk about that for a moment.
Early in the season, we tend to look for formation of systems very near the Bahamas, just to the east of the islands, in the Western Caribbean and in the Gulf of Mexico. That's early in the season. As we progress into the season, we tend to look further out into the Atlantic, where the systems become, they have a lot more time to generate and gain strength. And then during the latter part of the season, they tend to move back towards our area, nearer to the Bahamas, into the Caribbean, and back into the Gulf of Mexico. So those are the occurrences where the hurricanes tend to form and where they move across the Atlantic. The ones that are out there in the open Atlantic, those are the ones that we fear mostly, and they tend to generate during the peak of the season.
And that's when they build up and get...
Definitely.
Not that there's any good scenario in a hurricane, but basically from your perspective, if we are going to get hit, what is the best possible scenario of a hurricane coming through the islands, and or what type of storm will do the least amount of damage?
Well, we tend to say to the public, you only need one system to move into your area to be a major, or at least a busy season. Mm-hmm. We do have two islands nearby that tend to protect us during the season. That's Hispaniola and Cuba. They have some very tall mountains. So when we do get systems tracking towards those islands, they favor us a lot more. But if they stay on the Atlantic and avoid those islands, that's the scenario that we most fear.
Greg, thank you very much. We're going to bring you in on our discussion with our other guests in just a moment, but thank you for the predictions. We're obviously going to be talking all about hurricanes in this show. We are going to take our first break in the show. Stay with us. We've got more on the record right after this.
Hi, I'm Davriel, and welcome to Rev Tips, where we answer your most important Rev service questions. Today, I want to talk to you about the exciting new Rev Go Play app. But how does it work? Well, you start by opening a Cable Bahamas My account, so you can take your TV everywhere. Here's a few notes to get you started watching TV on the go. Step 1. Create a Cable Bahamas My account. Step 2. Download the latest version of the Rev Go Play app from the Google Play or iTunes App Store. Step 3. Log into the app using your email and My account password. Step 4. Enjoy your Rev TV on the go. Well, that's our Rev tip for today. Be sure to join us next time for more information on how to get the best out of all your Rev services.
And welcome back to more on the record. In the wake of the hurricane season, tonight's topic is hurricane season. When disaster strikes, the time to prepare has passed. And we are happy to have with us tonight Caroline Turnquest of the Red Cross, Sterling Moss of BPL, and Greg Thompson from the Met Office. First of all, thank you very much for being on the show tonight. As we were getting ready, I said it seemed like only last week we were in this studio talking about an impending storm or even the aftermath of a storm. Hurricane season seemed to come by very, very quickly and seemed to stay with us a really long time. But first of all, thank you for coming on the show. This is a very important topic tonight. Before we get started, I do just want to put out a disclaimer. We did invite an official from NEMA, the National Emergency Management Agency. We had put in that request actually months ago, even from last year. We were told that they were unable to come because they are still preparing. I find that a little strange, as you are preparing less than a week before the actual hurricane season starts. We can't ever seem to get anyone from NEMA on the show, so if you're listening, the invitation still stands, and hopefully their preparations end very soon. Welcome back to the show. We are happy to have you on, Greg. We had you in the first segment talking about the predictions for the year. But Caroline Turnquist, I'm going to begin with you now to tell us a little bit about how the Red Cross prepares. And I ask that, and I'm sure you get that question a lot every year. How are you preparing? And I'm sure there are some standard things you are doing, but what's different, or is there anything different this year that you are doing to prepare yourself, or is it the usual preparations that you go through every year?
It's more or less the usual. And this year, like any other year, we began to ensure that the family islands are ready, because they're further from us, and so we began to send in supplies weeks ago to ensure that they have a working amount of things to use in the event they are impacted, until we're able to get to them just in case. And in-house, we've started to purchase our supplies. We've started to have our disaster team meetings. We have begun to basically put things in place. We've started to do like town meetings and outreaches in the various communities, because I feel that we need to take the information to the people.
Are these meetings well received? Are people coming?
Oh, very well received, as a matter of fact, very well received. In fact, we always invite someone from the areas of like social services, the Met Office, and Ministry of Works to come and speak on their role in a disaster, in particular a hurricane.
Why is that so important to speak with people now, to pass along that information?
Because every bit of preparation could not hurt. Because if you wait, like I just heard you say it, if you wait until the disaster strikes, it's too late. So it's very important that people take the message seriously. And I think over the past year or two, they have been, especially since Matthew and New Providence being impacted the way it was. I think people are beginning to get serious about their preparations and to ensure that they are ready in the event anything happens.
One of the things that I find most chaotic in after the storm is people just don't know who's responsible for what. There are all these needs and nobody is sure, and I don't know whether people just don't know or they forget, and I'm happy to hear that you're sort of getting out there ahead of time and saying, this is what social services does, this is what the Met Office role is, this is what the police, the defense was, so that people know ahead of time, these are the agencies I contact when I have these issues. So I'm very happy to hear that. Mr. Moss, BPL, you all, I would say, are probably under the brightest light. No pun intended. When it is, hurricane time, once a hurricane is even upon us, and after, of course, it passes, because the electricity is that one service that we can't seem to live without. We could tow water, we could do it on the phone a couple of days. God forbid we could do it on TV for a couple of days, but electricity is the thing that really is most egregious to most people when they're without. So I want to talk really about the preparations that BPL is making at this point.
Mr. Sawyer, thank you for having us here today from BPL, as well as the other guests. One of the things that we would have done as BPL is that we need lead times to secure equipment, poles, transformers, power conductors. So BPL would have raised orders for those types of equipment which are coming into the island prior to the storm. One of the things that we would do as well from the previous hurricane, Hurricane Matthew was one that impacted us. We look at our response time and we try to adjust and saying, hey, where did we go wrong? How can we improve in our service? And so in that implementation, we look at technologies that we can include, crew responses to improve our response time. We look at the family islands as well. One of the things that we're very concerned about is logistics. And so we have to get heavy equipment, sometimes move them in between islands based upon the impact of the storms. Some of the small islands, you have floods that really impact your vehicles on those islands. So after the storm, BPL is thinking about a response time, so we would have made contact with particular vendors who we know can help us in getting equipment
Beyond
through
standby.
the islands. That's correct. And then any other partners here in New Providence, we've begun the collaboration to speak with them. We know who the point people are so that we can have a conversation shortly, quickly, should a storm approach.
One of the things I'm going to talk about later on in the show is this whole issue of tree trimming and how we need to attack that. That's a very, very important part of preparation. We'll get back to that. Greg, from the meteorological department perspective, I mean, you guys work year-round dealing with weather and weather systems, and we've had a lot of severe weather lately. I mean, I've been trapped on some islands and couldn't move, couldn't fly out just because of the severe weather that we've been having. But, from a preparational, from preparational perspective, how are you all preparing yourselves, particularly when it comes to the equipment side of things and being ready to predict and getting people to understand that it is a forecast, it is a prediction and not an exact science, as many people, I think, sometimes miss.
Well, the Department of Meteorology has invested in new equipment. We now have a new forecasting tool, the SmartMet Smart Weather Alert, hoping to get all of that on stream. We also have one radar operational at the NASA Linden Pinden International Airport. We have another one installed in Abaco, ready to go. I think they'll be waiting some other equipment or parts for that to get that up and fully running. And of course, we do have two other radars that we have earmarked to be installed in the southern islands, Maguana and Long Island, to be exact. That will provide coverage for the entire chain. Before we lacked that coverage, we only had the one radar in Nassau. And we now have a new equipment provided by the Finnish government, the Finnish Meteorological Institute and the government. That was signed in a package deal in the previous administration. So we are now getting that up and running. And of course, in terms of the weather aspect, we do have newer and more advanced models that we use to help us to predict these systems.
Good news. We're definitely going to talk. I'm very interested in the radar system and how it is to work in theory. Very good. And I really have to say that I've been impressed with, particularly in the past few months, with the amount of alerts we get with the severe weather systems. It really helps the public to understand what is happening in many instances. So kudos to you guys. We have to take a quick break, but we've got lots to talk about. Stay with us. Our topic tonight, hurricane season. When disaster strikes, the time to prepare has passed. We'll be back right after this.
Are you coughing, sneezing, having headaches, respiratory issues, allergies, or itchy skin? Toxic mold may be the problem. Clear Solutions Plus can help. Certified best in the Bahamas, specializing in mold removal, water damage restoration, AC duct cleaning, and more. Call Clear Solutions Plus to schedule an inspection for your home or office at 677-3138 or 427-3138. Open 7 days at the Mount Royal Plaza. Clear Solutions Plus certified mold removal. Visit our website. We are your solution to indoor air pollution.
And welcome back. Tonight we're discussing the hurricane season. When disaster strikes, the time to prepare has passed. We have guests Caroline Turnquest, Greg Thompson, and Sterling Moss. Mr. Moss, I'm going to start with you. A lot of damage takes place during a storm due to falling trees, debris, etc. on the power lines. You all encourage people to cut back, but you also have a tree trimming plan and exercise. I want to talk a little bit about that, what you guys do, and then what we as the public can do as well to assist.
Thank you. That's a very important question. It's one of the greatest challenges for BPL. How we approach right-of-way management or tree trimming is during this time of the year, our focus will be on areas we call cross countries. So you have areas like Sea Breeze and South Beach and parts of the island where the power lines are behind the homes. So there's a challenge with access, but we want to trim those areas because we know that there's the greatest amount of impacts to those areas. They tend to be off longer after a hurricane, and people are building their homes and erecting fences, so it's a difficult area to trim. We would say to customers, keep the trees away from the power line at least 10 feet. Do not plant.
This is when you're planting and...
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Don't plant trees under the power lines that you know are going to grow 15, 20, 30 feet.
Coconut and palm.
Coconut, pear trees and so on, mango trees. People become very concerned about their fruit-bearing trees. They don't want you to trim them as well. So that's a concern for us.
When the tree fall in line, they're still concerned?
And it extends the power outages. Coconut limbs, as you mentioned, grow very fast. You cut off a limb of coconut tree to the trunk, and about a year's time or less, it's back into the line again. And so in BPL's time to do a complete cycle, it's difficult for us to do a cycle in 1 year. So we need customers, once their trees are trimmed, to either hire a pruning company or they themselves keep the trees pruned away from the line. Of course, if you find that the tree is touching the power line, then you call BPL.
Yes.
If it's just close proximity, there's a risk of a ladder falling on the line, stay away, call BPL, and we will address the trimming.
Okay, good idea. Also, even removing trees from your, I mean, this is directly your area, but removing trees from near your home. I went through a personal exercise. I removed about 5 trees that had grown up.
Yes.
And I thought, well, if they fall, they can hit the house.
And that is true as well. We have calls from customers who say, well, I'm concerned about my house, yes, but I want you to trim the tree because it could fall on the power lines. Okay. So you have certain trees that you know grow to enormous heights. You want to think of them. And this is the time now where you actually trim those branches and cut the trees down to size. Another issue is wind impacts, because the line may be 20, 30 feet away. Right. You have a hurricane category 3, maybe more. Those limbs are going to snap and become missiles, and they impact your service line, impact the power lines as well. So this is the time to keep those trees pruned from line.
Does it make sense to call in? I mean, if I see sort of a bunch of trees on a line near my house, does it make sense to call into the tree trimming department?
If you see trees next to the power lines, or they're actually touching the power lines, then call BPL, because we don't want anyone. We know of cases where there's been fatalities. And so they're not trivial issues. You have to be very careful about them.
Okay, good stuff. Greg, I want to talk a little bit about the radar system that you would have alluded to. So for the first time now, we have the capability to have radar coverage up and down the Bahamas from the south straight up into New Providence. At peak optimization, how effective will that system be, or could that system be?
Oh, very effective. We would have total coverage of the entire chain. And of course, you know, we have Miami's radar right next door, as well as QS. The intent is to get all the radars overlapping each other, and that is going to provide the extensive coverage of the islands. And that is going to benefit us greatly, because if a storm is approaching us from the southeast, we don't have radar coverage down there.
And it's difficult to say what the conditions are, etc., if you're not there.
Yeah. And we rely on the reports coming out, of course, along with this radar package. We also have automatic stations that be installed with some of those at some of those sites. So that
those stations go down from time to time, depending on how bad
they do
the
go
weather
down. Yes, of course they do go down. But they would provide information up to the time that they do go down.
What are the criticisms, particularly in the south, even the southeast, and sometimes in the central islands? They complain that they don't always get a true picture of what's happening. I mean, they're relying on radio, but they'll say, well, you know, we didn't know, you know, that the storm's going to last 12 hours, or we weren't sure, etc., and they weren't getting the accurate information. Is that because, you know, we did not have the radar capabilities, and in essence, you're still going off of a forecast, so the storm is forecast to move through in 6 hours, but it slows down for whatever reason? Yeah,
well, of course, we do rely on the hurricane models as well to provide the tracking of the system. It's not an exact science yet.
Will the radar help with that, is what I'm asking?
Definitely. You will be able to track the core of the system itself, the eye wall itself moving through the islands. And that with the radar capabilities, we can determine the speed, the rainfall amounts, and any possible tornadic activity within those. Of course, you would get those features with a hurricane coming through, especially a very strong one. So that would provide a lot more help for us.
Fantastic. Caroline, one of the things that you said that was of so much interest to me was the fact that people seem to be really engaged in the Family Islands. And throughout my many years of covering hurricanes, I always found that Family Islanders took storms more serious from the outset. It was only after we got slopped up a couple of times here in New Providence and we really started to take, and of course we went to the extreme, buying 20 loaves of bread and all kinds of other things. But you know, from that perspective, you know, do you find now that because we have had these very serious storms on a consistent basis, that on a national level we are more in tune?
I would say yes, because like I mentioned, Matthew really was an eye-opener for a lot of Nasuvians. But as you mentioned, the Family Island persons, in fact, they do shelters. Family Islands, a lot of them go to shelters. Maybe, you know, the experience of just riding it out with people. But people are now more, even if you look around New Providence in terms of building, you'll see a lot of persons now building with the hurricane impact windows. You know, so a lot of, even in their construction phase now, they're turning to this, and not just for fashion. But people are taking it more serious, and if you watch the dialogue on Facebook, you'll see, well, you know, they are preparing, they're putting their stuff together.
People are very engaged
yes,
when a storm is moving.
They are. And that's one of the things we're very pleased about, actually. But it still doesn't mean that we must cut back on getting the information out there.
Most definitely.
Because we want everyone to be able to not fall through the cracks, but to be engaged and ready.
You all are providing a service. You rely on some funding, but you also rely very heavily on the generosity of the public. I want to talk about, you know, getting ready and what it takes. Because people see the Red Cross and think, oh, well, they're here to help. But in order to help, you need help as well.
Yes.
And I want to talk about what, you know, in terms of what the level of donations, the kinds of things you need even now. Because a storm isn't coming, it's a season of plenty. And when a season of plenty, we may have some extra things here and there. But what kinds of things are you in need of right now that can help in your work in the unlikely event?
Right now, we are preparing packages. For instance, we're doing the meal parcels. So we put the rice, tuna, etc. to, you know, create those packages. Blankets, brand new blankets.
Not the old set, you don't use that.
No.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so we put together blankets, and all of this is to make sure that we have stuff in the event anything happens. But don't forget, our operation is a bit different because we have persons that have personal disasters every day.
Right.
And so we have
Yours is just not a hurricane relief?
No. We have,
Wow.
yeah, we have persons that walk in on a daily basis seeking our assistance, and of course we have to step up to the plate. So as an auxiliary to government, we are mandated to and people come to expect that the Red Cross have these things.
Yeah.
But what they do not understand is that these things come from our resources, and we still have the operational expenses that we have to deal with, you know, right now as we speak. I'm having challenges thinking where funds are coming from to pay my staff salary. Now, these are the things people would not support you with. You know,
why you need to pay staff? I
Right.
know it's a voluntary thing.
Of course.
Right.
And then, you know, of course.
But it's still a business that needs to
and
run.
they're under the impression that our expenses are free. No, we still have to pay the power bills.
No, still have to pay
the
BPL,
phone.
eh?
Of course. We don't get any break with that. So, you know, those type of things we expect people.
So you need those non-perishables,
Non-perishable
you need
items.
blankets, you need money. So
Of
donations
course,
are always
yes.
appreciated.
And water. Bottled water.
Okay.
Bottled water. Like,
Water is
ever
spoiled,
since
yeah.
I would say back from walking time, we have been sending in pallets of water into the Family Islands for those residents, especially right now, Ragged Island.
Still sending?
Yes, we're still sending Rumkey,
Wow.
those areas. We have to, on a constant basis, have to send in water and other supplies to them.
So, you know, I want to encourage folks that when you're doing your regular shopping, pick up a few items extra, bring them down to the Red Cross.
Yes, of course.
You all can use them.
We
And
appreciate
if you
that.
want to know, is there a place for folks to go if you want to know, like, what things do you need? Because obviously you can't, certain things you should not buy.
Yes.
But do you all have a list of items?
Yes,
somewhere
we
yet?
normally post that on our website.
Okay, so definitely check that out, folks. BPL, I'm going to come back to you, Sterling, to talk a little bit about one of the things you talked about is the movement of equipment and resources. When you have a very large storm, in the case of a Matthew, when Providence takes a really hard hit, concentration of population, people screaming bloody murder from the moment the storm, within half an hour the storm passes and they want lights on. How do you balance all of that? Because you still got your folks down in Ragged Island, on Long Island, on these other places that they deserve the same level of service and restoration. But you've got, it's not like where you can get a truck and drive for an hour and get to a site.
That's a very good point. So one of the things that the organization does is, one, on those local islands, they have materials themselves that are stocked up. Of course, they're going to face their challenges. BPL, of course, is a part of CARILEC, and so we rely on international help from the Caribbean and Caribbean partners, and if necessary, we can go into North America. To also address that issue, we have a number of vendors, private contractors on the island, and in our preparation, pre-storm prep, we identify those particular contractors, and we would rely on them to play a part in the restoration effort as well. And so our teams are being shared between New Providence as well as the Family Islands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You all do something in a storm or let me ask you this one. Let's start here first. Since last year, what improvements have been made to the network, or have any improvements been made to the network that may cause it to stand up or hold up a little longer? A friend of mine have a joke, say, you throw a bucket of water out the back door and the lights go off. Ain't my joke. But, what improvements have you all made, or have you made to the system to try and, improve the service during a storm?
So, let's talk about this. This is very key. If you have a Category 3, a Category 5 storm coming through, that's going to impact the island of New Providence, BPL may elect to disconnect power from the grid, shut down the lines to minimize the impact of the storm. And
it's important that people understand that, because you see people complaining,
exactly.
Oh, lights off and the storm may reach it.
Exactly. And you have to think about crews getting in after cover, shutting down parts of the island, and then getting under cover themselves ahead of the storm. The part of the system that is most vulnerable is the overhead systems. They're going to be the parts that see impacts. But you have some of our power stations, Clifton Pier, for instance, right next to the ocean. Mm-hmm. A significant storm surge may have some impact upon the power station. So a decision could be made to shut down the generators. And the same with our inland power stations. So that's the first call. If the storm is going to be significant impact, we're going to shut down the grid. Overhead first. We will leave underground systems on. They're fine until the storm passes. You have flooding is going to be another concern as well. So once we've made that, your question initially is what kind of developments we've done. Some of our underground network has been improved. One of the things that we do in the pre-storm preparation is to look at poles. We sound them, we test them. What's their capability? Do we see any one of them that are prone to rot or can fall during a storm? We take them out and replace them. We've done that, especially on our major transmission network, extra high voltage lines. So we've done that kind of maintenance. And then we do ongoing maintenance that includes things like infrared inspection. Of course, tree trimming as well is a major issue for us. It's a challenge, but it's something that we're doing as well to mitigate against a storm impacting us.
Sounds good. And I think people are comforted in knowing that there is a preparation plan in place. I just wish people would stop crashing into the poles throughout the year. It distresses me, not just because people could lose their lives, but you look at how that impacts the system and the money that you guys spend on that.
It's a cost. It's a loss, and the new guys are hitting the poles, and by the time we get there, they're gone. Because that's, once we know that individual, BPL is
so they leave the scene?
Or leave the scene. But if we know and we find those individuals through the police, we're going to assess them a cost because they have to pay for the damage they've caused, and people are running away from
Good
us.
for you all. And so if you see someone who crashed into a pole
Please let
and
me
leaving the scene, take a picture. You'll like to
you.
post on Facebook and all those kinds of wonderful things. We are at the point of another break in the show, having a wonderful discussion on a very serious topic. We're talking about the hurricane season. When disaster strikes, the time to prepare has passed. We're back right after this.
Carey's Fabric and Uniform Store is not just your leading uniform store. Carey's has a huge selection of beautiful beaded laces and embellished fabrics perfect for weddings, proms, and evening dresses. Also find stretch lemurs, stretch taffetas, scubas, neoprenes, upholstery fabrics, men's suiting material, and a whole lot more. Find evening bags, gloves, and rhinestone jewelry. That's Carey's Fabric and Uniform Store on Mackey Street, a designer's paradise.
I'm getting nervous.
Watch the breakdown.
Cable, with your phone out, gotta hit them angles. With your phone out, snapping like you Fable. And you showing off, but it's alright. And you showing off, but it's alright. It's a short life, yeah.
It's funny, yeah.
With just days to go before the start of the Atlantic hurricane season, tonight we're talking about the hurricane season, specifically when disaster strikes, the time to prepare has passed. Our guests, Caroline Turnquest, Greg Thompson, Sterling Moss. Greg, we are what you would call geographically in the hurricane belt. I think that's what it's called. But depending on what side that storm comes up on, it depends a lot of times on the level of damage. I want to talk a little bit about how these storms, have they followed a pattern in the past few years, and when are we most at risk?
The systems come off of Africa as what we call tropical waves, so perturbations in the wind field, and they tend to have showers and thunderstorms form. During the season, depends on, as I mentioned to you earlier, with the El Nino effect, as well as the sea surface temperature and how deep that water is warmed. When these systems come off of Africa, if they have sufficient time to and fuel to get started, then they do get their act together. We do have quadrants of the storm that we refer to, and the northeast quadrant is normally what we call the dirty side of the storm. So that's
what's the northeast quadrant?
the northeast of the core of the system.
Okay.
That's what we refer to as the dirty part of the storm. That's
Why?
the side that you don't, because the maximum winds and the damage is done in that quadrant.
So if we end up on that side of the storm, we're in for problems.
But if the system itself is strong, as we had with Matthew, that moved through, it doesn't matter. The system just does a lot of damage.
One of the things that happened with Matthew that I had not seen, and I don't remember it happening in recent years, was one, the level of intensity coming from the southeast quadrant of the island. The fact that, and for the first time that I remember, we had so many people who had to evacuate.
Yeah, it was a major system coming through, of course.
And that people had a real issue with that because they'd never really been faced with that. We, particularly in New Providence, we ride out the storm.
Yeah, we haven't had a major system come through the entire. And Matthew was a unique storm because it actually, as I like to refer, it thread the needle, came right up through the chain. So everybody was affected. And the core of the winds extended out a good distance, so there was no way any of the islands would have missed some damage at least. And if you were in the core of the system itself, with the tornadoes that occurred with that system, because my Grand Bahama had some, and Ross here in New Providence, we had some tornadic activity with the system. So you basically, with a major storm, really are going to feel the impact. As I mentioned, the northeast quadrant of the system tend to be the strongest, where we get the strongest winds, the maximum damage. So most systems, when they're out in the Atlantic, if they're staying in the Atlantic away and east of us, we sustain some damage, but not as significant.
One of the major challenges that Matthew presented, particularly for New Providence, was getting people to heed the warnings to evacuate. People just did not want to go to a shelter or just did not want to move.
With Matthew, I know we put out the warnings for the South.
Everybody put out a warning. I think for the Prime Minister at the time said people get out, evacuate, but people did not want to move.
Well, I had actually had 1 or 2 calls because I worked through the system through that hurricane, and a lot of people wanted to know, well, I'm living on Marshall Road. I'm on the north side of Marshall Road.
That seems pretty safe.
No, we were telling people if you are in that location, the storm surge that we expected was going to be significant. So you had to evacuate. And those people did heed my warning, but most others down there did not.
And, you know, when you're looking at it, it came from the south, which means it impacted the southern side. I live in the west. And so I'm accustomed to the brunt of the storm maybe coming from that side. I'm accustomed to the storm surge, etc. But getting people to understand what storm surge is and why is it so dangerous in a storm. I mean, you got the rain, you got the wind, but the danger of storm surge, even when you say to yourself, hey, I'm significantly inland, I cannot see the sea from here, why should I move? Why is this a danger to me?
Well, you have to take into consideration that we are relatively flat. The chain of island, and we have removed quite a bit of the mangroves on some of the shorelines, and that is also a problem.
And we've had the National Trust folks on here and some other people talking about the dangers of that.
The mangroves, believe it or not, provided some kind of defense. They tend to weaken the surge as it comes ashore, but because the mangroves have been cut out in a lot of locations on the southern side of the shore.
Beachfront property and all these kind of things.
So
let me take them up for a beautiful view.
And if
but
you
now
have,
we have no protection.
You have a 12-foot storm surge coming in there, 12, 15-foot storm surge. It's going to make a good track inland. So if we put out the warnings, we ask the public to heed the warnings. We put them out for a reason.
Caroline, one of the concerns people have about, well, people have issues with going to shelters. I make no bones about that. I think people just feel, if I could use a term, they feel a type of way about going to shelter. Yeah, the stigma. What kind of assurances can you give that, you know, it's a comfortable, safe, it's the right, you know, it is the place to be? Because I'll be honest, going to live with your family is not always an option, or some people just don't want to be bothered. But, you know, if you find yourself having to go to a shelter, or that is an option, what do you say to folks to bring that level of comfort that, you know, these places are secure, they're safe, you know, and you think of a shelter, you think of hundreds of people cramped into one space.
And it hasn't been like that, but I think now, this past hurricane, there were many more persons
a lot of people
going
came
to the shelter.
To shelters, yeah.
And I think after the New Providence experience, everyone's going to want to go to the shelter now because they were treated so royally. So,
so let's talk about the shelter experience.
Let me just add that every year, the Ministry of Works, along with other partners, inclusive of the Red Cross, they do shelter inspections. And you have to meet a certain criteria to ensure that you remain on the list. And a report is done. Our representative gives us a report, and a general report is done by the Department of Social Services. And 1 or 2 areas may come off the list. So if you won the shelter last year, doesn't mean you're going to be on this year.
So it's not automatic because I went there last year, I should go.
They do a thorough shelter inspection, and they have a list to work with.
What kinds of, we don't have to go into everything, but what kinds of key things need to be in place for a site to be designated as a shelter?
First of all, it should not be in an area that's going to flood. It should be on some type of a little rise. You also have to have safe security, like proper windows. You have to have a backup generator, first aid kits. You have to have the spacing, of course. You have to have the bathrooms, working bathrooms, and a working kitchen. And you have to have an area where you can actually have persons, if they need to, have put a few people aside, that they can do that. So shelters are becoming more popular, I would say, with persons now that the stigma hopefully will be removed.
And who mans those shelters?
Shelters are manned by the Department of Social Services. They are responsible for the shelters, along with the security aspect of it is done by the Royal Bahamas Defense Force members.
So there is law and order in the shelter?
Yes, it is.
Come in there,
To be found with the Family Islands, the Red Cross normally ends up on the Family Islands. It's supposed to be social service, but Red Cross always ends up manning the shelters.
Okay, all right. And what about supplies? Do you all provide supplies to the shelters?
We ask that the persons, when you're going, you would take your supplies with you.
Right.
The shelters are they don't have things there.
Right.
But the persons who are going to man the shelter, well, they take their own stuff.
Of course.
But a lot of persons, you can't expect to go to a shelter empty-handed.
Yeah, take your things with you.
Yes.
Okay. And even, is it important now for people to begin thinking about, if I had to leave my home, what things do I take? Should you pack a bag? Should you have a list?
We have what we call a pack a go bag, right? And the Red Cross has an app, the Hazards app, and if you went on there, it's a list of items. You make sure you have your medication. Yes, we have the Hazards app as well. It's also on the first aid app that we have out. So ensure you go there, as well as to our website, bahamasredcross.org, and make a list of that stuff. But it's never too early to have that in place.
One of the things I know that people don't think about, and I get my family to do it all the time, when the storm is coming, I hand out Ziploc bags and I say start to secure, your valuable documents, your passports, things of that nature, in case something happens physically, or you've got to run very quickly.
I normally recommend that in terms of documents, that you would scan it, or you have the smartphones and email it to yourself so it'll sit on a server, for instance, like Gmail, and you can always pull it down and make a copy.
That's a good idea. I never even thought about that.
That's something.
So you can at least have you can document that you did.
Right, and then still secure the original copy.
Fantastic, fantastic. We have one more break to take. We're going to continue our discussions on the hurricane season. We have lots of information. You've heard about the app, the website, etc. We're going to impart you with a little bit more information in our final segment. You're watching On the Record. We are back right after this. We are in our second season of On the Record, and we thank you, our viewing audience, for allowing us into your homes every Thursday at 8 p.m. We value your opinion, and we want you to be a part of our discussions. So make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram and comment on our exciting topics. Remember, it's all on the record.
It's a wealth of entertainment with a touch of class and sophistication. A journey of the senses with an unparalleled sense of style. Discover hidden adventures that are cradled in the palms of paradise. Traverse the annals of human history and explore the farthest reaches of exclusivity. It's an excursion that few can afford, but all should experience. And it's only on AWE.
And we are into our final segment of this episode. Our topic tonight is the hurricane season. When disaster strikes, the time to prepare has passed. I'm going to begin, Sterling, talking about supplemental power. A lot of people have generators that they go to, install generators, and the portable ones that they buy. The portable generators got very popular, particularly after Matthew, when we were out. Yeah, we were out of power in the Providence for a long time. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the precautions that people need to take even with generators, because you're still dealing with power at the end of the day. But some of the common mistakes and some of the common issues that people face with these, whether they're the larger backup generators or the smaller portable ones.
Good. So, of course, one of the things is, let's start with the hookup. And we say to people, you can have a portable generator that you put in your yard someplace, and you run a drop cord with a power strip to supply essential items, depending on the magnitude of load the generator can carry. If you're going to do that, the generator has to be placed in a ventilated area. You cannot bring it inside. As you know, we may have had a fatality from that. But also, recently as well, you cannot put the generator near a room window where carbon monoxide can actually come into a room and still cause a fatality. You have to put the generator in a well-ventilated area. You have to be aware of how they are to be connected. We've had one issue in some cases where crews have come to work and someone's generator was able to supply power back onto the grid, which our crews found when they followed their safety protocols. But you must...
So the power went from their house back into the line, which was supposed to be off.
That's correct.
Oh, wow.
So you have to be aware of that. It is rare, but it can happen if the conditions are right. So you have to know how to actually connect those generator systems. If you don't know, because some people do not want a power strip, they want to connect the generator directly to their main switch. You must be aware of what you're doing. If you are going to pursue that route, use a certified electrician to make the connections.
Not your friend.
Not your friend, not Uncle Bubba.
Someone down the road who could take $50. Yeah. No, because sometimes we run into problems because we want to cut corners.
Exactly.
Now, in terms of the portable generators, when you say in a ventilated area, is it garage or back patio, backyard? What are you talking about in terms of where you want to put it?
Well, a garage would be an enclosed area as well, so I would say not in a garage. Again, it's the fear from people of theft.
Yeah, I was about to say that's a huge issue. People stealing generators.
So you may have to change your generator to cook on a tree in the backyard, for instance, or some tree or some immovable object to prevent someone from stealing it.
Attach it to something.
Exactly.
Yeah, buy a chain so you could chain it.
But as far as possible from the home, where you know that there's going to be a cross ventilation and air flowing as well. I want to say, during this time, customers, people who have their homes should be looking at their main switch. Those systems, main switches, meter cans, we find that they're not maintained. Some people just have the power's turned on and they're happy and they go on for years and years. But those are systems that have to be maintained. Grounding under these conditions, flying debris, you have surge impacts. These kind of issues can cause abnormal conditions, which can cause your home to have a surge and damage your equipment. Grounding systems have to be maintained. The main switch, you have horizontal rains that come through this time where water flows from high winds and can get into your main switch, causing corrosion and damage. You have to make sure your weather boxes are intact, they're up, they're prepared, they're sealed, because rats and other rodents during this time, if you have a storm, they want to find a place where they can move.
They take shelter as well.
They take shelter and they can they short themselves out on those terminals. They impact your power supply as well. So maintain your systems with the use of a certified electrician.
Is there a place you can go to find this information, to look at, any kind of reservoir of information I can look at as a homeowner?
Customers can visit BPL's website,
okay.
And they can get some information with the tree trimming impacts, especially that's a concern. You can call 302-1594. Right now, we have a number of customers who see power supply problems in their house. You see the lights fluctuate, you see them go bright and dim. They may have part supply conditions. If they find those conditions now and they exist, they can notify us at 3235561. That's our emergency hotline number. And if they have a power supply problem, we will come by. And also, once we investigate, if there is a private issue that the customer has to address, our crews will inform them accordingly.
Good information. Thank you very much. So, folks, instead of using your smartphone just to be on Facebook, go and Google this information. Go to PPL's site, read, get the right information. Use your phones for a good purpose, for a change. Caroline, people want, after a storm passes, people generally want to help. They want to do something, but they don't know what to do. You know, they start gathering things, or they just, hey, I just want to help, I just want to show up. Once the storm has passed, what do you generally need the most from people, and how do I, you know, if I just want to come and help, what can I do, where can I go, you know, what's the protocol?
Certainly, one of the main things needed is manpower. We have to get the boxes
People
ready to
power.
go. Yes, people power. Yeah, so we need persons afterward to help us to come into the warehouse, to help us to put together those boxes, pack the blankets, etc., especially if they're to be shipped out, or if persons are coming in for assistance, because sometimes we're inundated. And let me just put on the record, if anything happens, you say, I pray that that WhatsApp fake news does not
Sometimes
surface,
we need to
because
we need
it
to
really,
stay off
really,
of
yes, it
what's
really
up with
sets
foolishness.
us totally back with
I'm glad you brought that up.
misinformation about the things that we have to offer, and people come, you know, in droves. We heard you have washers and dryers and television sets.
People get a washer after a hurricane? Really?
Listen, you'll be surprised at the things they come for. But I'm just hoping, I'm just putting that out there. But we do need persons to help us to come in and prepare. You know, we do have a volunteer database, and the time to really help is now, prior to, so that we will be in a position to just hit the ground running if anything should happen. So persons that want to donate, you know, this now is the time, because you never know if you will be impacted,
You will be the one who
and
needs
you
help,
don't
yes.
have the time to give
Most
us or
definitely, yeah.
anyone else,
So
as a matter of
that's
fact.
a very, I still don't believe people's come looking for washer
Of
and dryer.
course, television sets, everything.
TV? If y'all giving them away, let me know. I need an AC unit. But in all seriousness, I mean, I started out the show by, you know, really chastising the folks at NEMA, and I want people to understand how serious this is, and we are, you know, days out from the hurricane season, and already, Greg, there is a system, there's an active system or something out there that we need to sort of keep an eye on, eh?
Yeah, there's a tropical disturbance just off the Yucatan Peninsula that the National Hurricane Center is
Let
watching.
people know where the Yucatan Peninsula is. Everybody getting past geography.
Just to the west of western Cuba.
Okay.
And right off of, if you know where Belize is, it's part of the Yucatan Peninsula.
Okay.
And if you notice, a lot of convection is associated with the system. The National Hurricane Center has this now up to an 80% chance for formation, becoming a named storm, either subtropical or tropical in nature. Fortunate for us, it's going to be moving into the Gulf of Mexico, but the moisture associated with that system is expected to come across the Bahamas, South Florida, western Cuba, and it's looking to be a wet weekend for us starting on Saturday. The moisture is already there. You notice outside it's cloudy, and we've been having some showers.
We've had an interesting month of May. It's been very wet and windy, and we've had all kinds of things going on this month.
Yeah, and of course a lot of people are attributing or making comments about global climate change, etc. That could be a portion of it, but of course the systems are getting stronger. They're starting earlier. And we're having seasons that go even longer than the normal season.
I remind people that Hurricane Michelle was a November hurricane. I remember it very clearly.
We actually had one year that we exhausted the names of the system, and we went into the Greek alphabet.
Into the Greek alphabet.
And we started using that. So it's we always try to get the public sensitized. We want them to be prepared for the season. As I said earlier, you only need one storm.
That's true.
You don't need 6 or 7 storms in the season. You just need that one
One
storm
big
to
one.
affect you, and that would constitute a busy season for you.
You know, thank you. I'm glad you said you only need that one, but I do want to point out to people that, you know, Hurricane Matthew taught us a lot of lessons, but particularly when New Providence is hit really hard.
Yeah.
Because we are the center and the nucleus of country, and when things happen here, it affects every single island. And so those of us here in New Providence, especially, sometimes we are very last minute and don't take things very seriously. But, you know, I'm happy to hear that people around the country are taking these storms seriously and paying attention. And that's one of the reasons why we thought it's so important to do this show at this time. You know, unfortunately, NEMA couldn't join us. As I said at the top of the show, I hope that they finish their preparation soon, and at some point they can come on and talk to us. Folks, I do want to thank you for coming on. I mean this in the nicest way, but I hope we don't have to have this discussion anytime again this year. I hope that things go well and we have a seamless hurricane season. I don't know, but should that happen, we'll be here to bring you back on and to talk. And I do want to say that to all of you represented here, to the agencies represented here, to those who are not represented, and to all of you who are involved in this, the public owes you a great debt of gratitude, and we thank you for your work. And we realize how important it is. We know that you become even more important at this time of the year, but certainly we know that your work continues year-round. And I just want to say thank you, not just for coming by, but certainly thank you for the work that you do to keep us safe and to get us back on our feet in the aftermath of the storm. So thank you so very much. You're welcome. Before we go, I do want to say a special note of congratulations. Shanae Smith is now a former University of the Bahamas student. She graduated today. Shanae is responsible for all the great photos that you see on our social media pages, and she's responsible for running our social media pages. She's always very quiet and unassuming in the studio. She's been with us from day one, has provided a great service, and I want to congratulate her, first of all, on her graduation today, but also on being named the top journalism student at the university this year. We congratulate her, and I understand that award was donated by Kyle Walking of our News. So Shanae, congratulations to all of us on your award and definitely on your graduation. We thank you for the work that you do for us every week here on The Record. So again, kudos to you. Well, we hope that you have all enjoyed our show tonight. Special thanks to Caroline Turnquest, Greg Thompson, Sterling Moss, also my producer, technical staff, and of course you, the audience, for watching us every week. Be sure to join us for more On The Record, same time, same place next week. Once again, I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. I'll see you next time.